Hello Wolfpack. Yesterday's video I mentioned 24-hour to 36-hour time period, or 48-hour time period in which Bitcoin needs to break out. And that's kind of happening right now, right? Bitcoin's breaking out. I know people are like, well, what's going on, Wolves? You know, the price hasn't moved. Well, generally speaking, I mean, the trend direction has been determined here. The trend direction has been determined as upwards. You know, on the small chance we get a fake out, obviously that's not the case, but the trend direction has been determined as upwards for the short term. What do I think is going to happen next? Exactly what I've said in previous videos. I think we're going to go upwards towards the bull market support band on Bitcoin. I think we're going to go up to here around, 43K, and then I think we're going to reject downwards and head down to this line again, and on that occasion, we're going to lose the line, okay? So, realistically, it doesn't really matter what I think right now, because regardless, the longer-term trend, in my opinion, and even the medium-term trend, is downwards, shorter term, most likely upwards. That's my opinion on Bitcoin right now, but even given that reality, even given that fact, what we can look at is the fact that, well, the Bollinger Bands are tightening right now, and so whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen within the next, 3 candles or 4 candles, because when Bollinger Bands tighten, it means that a move is on the way. That is historically what it means. It's historically what it does. You see here, for example, Bollinger Bands tighten massively, we move downward sharply. Bollinger Bands tighten massively, we move downward sharply, right? Bollinger Bands started to tighten, we move downward sharply. Now that we're on support, the Bollinger Bands tightening might lead to a move upwards, right? Now, honestly, I'm not confident enough in this short-term prediction to make any kind of decision based off of it. I said it in yesterday's video. I'd honestly consider myself more neutral in the short term than bullish or bearish. I don't really know what's going to happen in the short term. I would suspect that due to this break upwards, we're going to go upwards to the bull market support band. But honestly, I'm not going to go ahead and say I'm predicting or putting any capital on the line because of that prediction, because there's really not much evidence here at all. I mean, if we look at something like, for example, the 4-hourly chart on Bitstamp, which is what I was just looking at, and then compare it to something like the 4-hourly chart on something like Binance, we can see that on Binance, let me just set it up for a second here, on Binance, it's really hard to kind of draw the same lines, right? So this might actually be an exchange to exchange base, resistance line here. I mean, you can see it kind of works out, but not really as clear. And so there is the possibility that this whole breakout is kind of a phony, and that it's just, depending on what exchange you're looking at, because different exchanges have slightly different charts, right? That's a thing that's, pretty common sense at this point, because obviously each exchange has a way of measuring the price independently, and they have a way of having their own buying and selling prices for different assets, and so you're going to have slight differences between each exchange. And so this resistance line could certainly be one of those things where it's just like coincidental that Bitstamp looks like this, whereas Binance doesn't really look like a breakout. And so that's another reason why I'm not too confident in this trade here, because, well, there's no 100% guarantee that it's actually a breakout. It could just be a coincidence within the charts. But essentially, regardless of all of that, I'd say it's still most likely to move up to bull market support band. But ultimately, as you guys would know, and a lot of new people watch my videos every video, as you guys wouldn't know, but I'm going to say it to you right now, I think that Bitcoin is going to go downwards towards a 200-week estimate at 24K. I think that's going to happen before November. I think there's a chance that happens in a May correction, and we're going to be looking at in a second. I think the May correction will start heading down there, but ultimately, I don't think we're going to bottom out on Bitcoin. I don't think we're going to start moving upwards into around November to December. I think for the most part, the vast majority of 2022 will be spent moving downwards slowly on Bitcoin, right? And the whole cryptocurrency market, and even the traditional markets to an extent, right? Because we're heading into a recession on traditional markets. We have seen inverted yield curve, which generally leads to one last pump, which we're seeing right now, right? This is when inverted yield curve happened. We've pumped up massively, and that's also coincidentally, not really a coincidence, but if you look at it on the surface level, that's also coincidentally when interest rates started to rise. And so this could, be very well one last pump of glory before it all goes to shit, essentially. And that's how people are looking at it right now. That's how I'm personally looking at it. I mean, we're going into a 50 basis point rise in next month. I mean, only 2 weeks from now, a little over 2 weeks, we're going into a 50 basis point rise, most likely. I mean, even the Federal Reserve has admitted that's going to happen. And so, again, that might just fuel this ridiculous, I guess, crazy pump that's not really based on anything even further, and then it's going to get to a point where we just crash. It kind of happens every recession. Every recession, before we see a recession, we see a massive pump, and it's just, making a last quick buck from the manipulation before the 12 to 24 month downturn. That's essentially what institutions try to do, and that's happened multiple times. So it's not a theory; it's actually just what happens. It's a fact. It's reality. And so yeah, we might see a continued irrational pump here on the S&P 500, but in reality, there's no way to determine how that's going to happen. There's no way to determine whether it will happen or not, because it's based on irrational it's based on an irrational process, so it's not logical. And so if it's not logical, we can't use statistics to analyze it. And so, yeah, but regardless, 2022 should be very bearish for Bitcoin. I 100% stand by that, and I've been standing by that since November 2021. And so, look, I'm not going to back away from that, just because we're holding support here. And in reality, we have to look at the longer term structure, and the longer term structure is, like it or not, and this is, again, not a opinion, this is a fact, okay? Like it or not, the long term structure is an ascending channel formation, could be seen as a bear flag, okay? What was this back here in May to July? It was a descending channel formation. There's complete and utter massive difference between the two. An ascending channel formation breaks to the downside around 72% of the time. A descending channel formation breaks to the upside around 76% of the time. So we have the opposite of what we've seen in May to July here. And we have it in kind of a pattern of exhaustion. It's not a pattern of accumulation. It's not a pattern of upwards accumulation. It's not a bullish pattern. It is a pattern of exhaustion. And you can see that just by looking at the volume, right? It's not hard to see. The volume is trending downwards while the price is trending upwards, right? Generally, we're trending upwards here. It's an ascending channel. So higher lows, higher highs, and the volume's trending downwards. What does that represent? Exhaustion, right? The buyers and even the sellers, to a certain extent, are getting exhausted. They can't keep pushing the price slowly upwards. There is a lack of interest in the market at these high prices, and it's honestly just begging for a drop downwards. I mean, I haven't seen bearish. That's very clearly bearish. That's a textbook ascending channel formation. Massively descending volume, gradually ascending price. That's what it is. And so to suggest that this could break to the upside is kind of stupid, right? Of course it could break to the upside. I mean, there's a reason why I said 72% of ascending channels break downwards, because, the other 28% break upwards. But what are you going to take? Which odds are you going to take here? You're going to take 72% or you're going to take 28%? It's pretty common sense to me, right? You're going to take the 72% odds and you're going to predict that it's going to go downwards, right? And so I would argue, and this is my personal opinion, obviously I don't want to offend anyone, but I would argue that if you were betting on the market going up right now, I would say you were betting against the data, right? You were betting against the facts. You were betting against just what it is. And that's TA 101. So before we jump into the second part of this video, I want to quickly shill something. Now, me and Megawell Crypto have been working very hard on Become a Trader, a 10-unit course. If you want to learn about what I was just talking about, right, the reality of the situation in terms of TA and the logical analysis, you're going to want to get into this course, right? So this is a Learn to Trade course. It's got 10 units, all of which covering a different topic. We've got a little description there. You can go to the website. I'll have it in the pinned comment below. Give it all a read. And these are the unit topics here. We have around 350 slides and around 83 videos and around 8 worksheets and a trading diary. So around 40 hours of content altogether, and the price, you can email us about that and the payment details. Email us there at cryptoacademycourses@gmail.com. Very important that you guys do this if you want to show support to the channel, and also if you want to learn about TA in an actual, trustworthy way, rather than scouring through hundreds of different YouTube videos from random YouTubers who you have no real understanding of whether you should trust them or not. This is what you need to look at. So Crypto Academy, again, me and Megawell Crypto, another analyst in space, have developed this, and I'm excited to have you guys there. But zooming out to the longer term trend, I want to look at the weekly chart, and I generally look at, I mean, you guys would know already what I think about the weekly chart, right? But generally I say that, for example, there are a few similarities between 2018 and 2022, and that's very evident, right? And if we looked at the 3-day before we looked at the weekly, what we can see is that it's actually extremely relevant. And it's extremely evident, the similarities between 2018 and this current price action. One of the similarities, we're being compressed on the 3-day chart between the 50 and the 200. When the 50 and the 200 crossed, we saw a 50% correction. The 50 and the 200 are going to be crossing in around mid-May on Bitcoin. Now, ignore this fractal. That's not what I want to talk about. And when the 50 and the 200 cross, there is a chance that just like in 2018, we see a 40 to 50% correction, right? Adjusted for diminishing returns, probably a 40% correction, right? That's what happened in 2018. Seeing as we're following the 2018 price action so accurately, there's no reason to believe that won't happen now, right? That's just what it is, unfortunately, for Bitcoin. It's not looking too great. Now, if we want to look at some more similarities, we can see that in 2018, Bitcoin was essentially riding the green line, the 200, and acting as resistance against the red line, the 50. And when we finally lost the 200, right, this green line, you can see there, we dropped down 50%, just like when it crossed, right? So again, so when it crossed, we lost 50%. But you can see that the compression period is very similar, right? Bouncing between these two indicators until they finally crossed, it had nowhere to go, and so it went downwards. That's exactly what we're doing right now, bouncing between these two dynamic resistance and support lines until the price may have nowhere to go, and then that move is going to be downwards. Why should it be downwards? Well, it's quite simple. We need to look at the macro picture a little bit more to determine that, and that is the 4-year cycle theory. Now, a lot of people think that the 4-year cycle theory isn't alive anymore, but the 4-year cycle theory is dead. I would beg to differ. The 4-year cycle theory is still very much alive, and it's actually more alive than ever, and it's actually got more evidence to support it than ever. Now, if we look at, for example, bottom to bottom 2015 to 2018 and bottom to bottom 2018 to 2022. In 2015 to 2018, there was 1,400 days. There was 1,400 days in the second 2018 to 2022. From top to top and top to top, 1,400 days in both occurrences. From bottom to top, 1,064 days on both occurrences to the day. Okay, and then from top to bottom and top to bottom, around 400 days on both occurrences, right? And then when we're looking at something like a test of the 200-week SMA to all-time highs, 520%. We held this red line as resistance for about 1,200 days. Again, we held this red line as resistance for about 1,100 days that time, very close. And then we can expect, using that trend, it's quite complicated. You can pause the video and look at this for a bit more if you want to understand a little bit further. We can expect that we will break all-time highs on Bitcoin in around August to September 2023, but we can expect before that happens, we're going to be bottoming out at around 24K, most likely in November to December, although that's not really super confirmed. But at 24K is relatively confirmed because that's a 200-week SMA, okay? That's what's suggesting we're going downwards. And so if we bring it all back to the weekly chart and wrap it all into the weekly chart, what we can see here as well is that, and if we wanted to zoom out and we could show you this, but I'm just going to tell you, you can take my word for it. Every time we lose the 50-week SMA, we end up over 200. We have lost the 50-week SMA. Not only have we lost it, we came back up, we've rejected off of it, and we're heading downwards again. So it's even worse than losing it. It's saying we've lost it, we had a bit of bullish momentum, we had a second chance, the bullish momentum wasn't enough, and now we've dropped down more, and now there's no hope, right? That's essentially what it said. The chart literally tells you that. If you translate what the chart tells you into English, that's what it would say, and that's not a good thing, right? And so, when we're looking at things like, when I see a lot of people saying generally things like this, right? They'll say, okay, but, that's all well and good, but what about, the hidden bullish divergence on the weekly chart? To that, I would say, well, what about the major downtrending line on the weekly chart, right? What about this major resistance line we're seeing on the weekly chart that looks like that, right? That the price constantly comes up, wicks off of it every single time. What about that line there? And then I would say, well, you can talk about, hidden bullish divergence. What about the massive bearish divergence on the weekly chart that, is still to this day having its effect? Okay, and then furthermore, I'm not saying this to be a perma bear, but it's just what it is, right? What about, this downtrending, this uptrending, hidden bearish divergence on the weekly chart? That's a fresh one that's playing out even sooner and even closer to the current date as that massive hidden divergence, right? So the RSI is absolutely filled with kind of mixed signals. And so it's very hard to determine what really is going to have a massive effect. And that's why I actually choose to kind of not really look at the RSI on the weekly chart right now. But then if we're looking at something like the stochastic RSI, which by the way, predicted the September top basically to the week. It also predicted the November top basically to the week as well. Let me circle that. So the last two tops have been predicted quite well by the stochastic. It also predicted this little, December 2020 top pretty well as well. It also predicted the all-time high in 2017 on Bitcoin pretty well. This is a pretty accurate thing. A lot of people look at stochastic RSI and they think, well, it's not too accurate. This one is pretty accurate, right? And it's predicted all of these tops quite well. And that's topped out right now. Right, even that is topped out after this dead cat bounce rally above the 50-week. So, what would you say to that? And then furthermore, if we're looking at something like the weekly chart, right, which obviously we're looking at, but we're looking at something like the MACD, you need to see the similarities between 2018 and 2022. And if you understand the similarities between 2018 and 2022, you'll see that, well, this bullish MACD cross isn't very bullish. Why is that? Well, look at 2018. We saw a bullish MACD cross. It flattened out, right? It didn't actually have the effect we wanted. It flattened out, and then we crashed downwards. What are we seeing right now? Exactly just like 2018, as expected, right? A bullish MACD cross. Right now, it's in the process. In the next 2 days, if this candle closes red, it will flatten out. Eventually, will crash downwards, just like 2018, right? So I don't see any actual macro reason here to be bullish on Bitcoin. I simply do not. right? We have the DXY pumping massively, which acts as a reverse correlated asset or reverse correlated chart to Bitcoin, right? When this thing goes up, Bitcoin generally goes down. That's pumping massively, just broken above a fresh resistance as well. S&P 500, very hard to tell about. But, you know, when we look at something like the 4-hourly chart, which we looked at the start of this video, it's like, well, yeah, okay. 4-hourly chart had a little breakout. It's not really confirmable. Like it's kind of a bit iffy because, again, different exchange charts say different things about the structure, and so I wouldn't even be confident enough to put my money where my mouth is on this one. I think it will go up, but, you know, I'm really not sure. And then we're thinking about, like, well, the short term, okay, maybe slightly bullish, probably neutral, and then the long term is overwhelmingly bearish. And where do we even think the short term is going to go? 43k, less than 10% up. So at this point, I think personally the best thing you can do is be swing trading, scalp trading altcoins. Stay the hell away from Bitcoin. I don't think this looks good at all. I think generally this is going to trend downwards with time. And as I said in my last video, I think within the next week and a half, we will be below this major ascending channel formation. We will have lost this line within the next week and a half at the most. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.